Welcome, dear learners. In the MOOCs of Energy Resources and Conversion Processes, I am your instructor for this course. I am Dr. Shweta Tripathi, Assistant Professor in Mechanical Engineering, School of Engineering and Technology, Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. In this module, we are going to discuss solar energy. In our previous module, we have already discussed the basics of solar radiations, and today we are going to discuss the basics of solar energy. The learning outcomes of this particular module is to understand the solar energy. We will also discuss various modes of heat transfer, and you will be able to understand the principle of solar collectors. You will be able to distinguish various kinds of solar collectors. At the end of this module, you will be able to evaluate the efficiency of solar collector, and you will be able to analyze the factors on which the efficiency of solar collectors depends. Solar energy, as we had already discussed, that it is the most readily available source of energy. It does not belong to anybody and is therefore free. It is also the most important of all the renewable sources of energy or non-conventional sources of energy because it is non-polluting and therefore helps in reducing the greenhouse effect. Solar energy has been used since ancient times, but in a most primitive manner. We hang our clothes to dry in the sun. We use the energy of the sun. In the similar way, solar panels also absorb the energy of the sun to provide heat for cooking and for heating water. Such systems are now available in the market and are being used in homes, industries, factories, everywhere. Office premises, we are generating electricity from the solar panel. So these are nowadays visible everywhere. If we talk about India, we know that India receives solar energy equivalent to over 5,000 trillion kilowatt-hour per year, which is far more than the total energy consumption of the country. In principle, solar energy can also be used to meet all our country needs, both thermal as well as electricity. Generally, the solar energy is broadly classified into two categories on the basis of its application or use. First is solar active application. In this type of application, what we do? We directly use solar energy to produce electricity. And second is solar passive application, that is indirect use of solar energy, which is usually called solar thermal applications. So thermal energy can be used for cooking, heating, drying, timber seasoning, distillation, electricity or power generation, cooling, refrigeration, cold storage, etc. And direct use of solar energy to produce electricity is by photovoltaic. We know that in the next few years, it is expected that millions of households in the world will be using solar energy. India is one of the few countries with long days and plenty of sunshine. So solar energy could be easily harnessed in India. Solar thermal energy is being used in India for heating water for both industrial and domestic purpose. Some of gadgets and other devices for exploiting solar thermal energy are solar cooker, flat plate solar cookers, concentrating collectors, solar hot water systems, solar ponds, solar hot air systems, solar dryers, solar timber kilns, solar stills, solar ponds, concentrating collectors, air conditioners, solar collectors coupled to absorption and refrigeration system, etc. So there are many applications of solar thermal energy. Although solar photovoltaic systems are used to convert solar energy directly into electricity, the heat that is generated during the process can be used for solar thermal applications as well. Basically, the solar energy is directly converted in the desired application form and is divided as solar thermal for heating applications and solar photovoltaic for electricity generation. The use of solar energy for thermal application is called solar thermal applications. Here, solar energy is collected and then converted to heat energy for application such as water and air heating, cooking and drying, steam generation, distillation by making use of an appropriate solar energy device. Basically, the solar thermal device consists of solar energy collector, or we call it absorber also, a heat transferring medium, and a heat storage or heat tank. Let us discuss solar absorber or solar energy collector. What is it? When solar energy comes into contact with matter, we have already discussed in the previous module, that is basics of solar energy, that whenever solar energy comes into contact with any surface or substance, any of the three things could be done. What are they? It may be reflected off the matter, or it may be transmitted through the matter, or it may be absorbed by the matter and turned into heat. So these three phenomena have much to do with the design and use of solar collector. So there are three main types of thermal solar collectors depending upon the temperature range on which they are used. So first is low temperature solar collector, medium temperature solar collector, and high temperature solar collector. Generally, when we talk about how we could efficiently use solar energy. So to efficiently use solar energy, the efficient modes of heat transfer in a solar energy collector is required. And what is it? It is heat transfer. What is heat transfer? Heat energy can transfer from one body to the other, or from one location in a body to the other. Within a body also heat transfer could take place. So the study of these techniques and methods are adopted to transfer heat energy is known as heat transfer. So to facilitate heat transfer between two bodies, there need to be a temperature difference between them. We had already discussed in our very first, in the modules of the first week, that heat transfer takes place from higher temperature to the lower temperature. This means that the two bodies must be at two different temperatures, one in higher than other, to allow heat to flow from one body to another. And heat will be always transferred from higher temperature to the lower temperature. Low to high heat transfer is not possible. It is only possible when we will give an external work at the lower temperature, at the body of lower temperature. So generally heat transfer takes place from higher temperature to lower temperature. Now there are three possible modes of heat transfer. What are they? They are thermal conduction, thermal convection, and thermal radiation. Now what is thermal conduction? It is that method of heat transfer in which the heat transfer takes place within a body or from one body to the other due to the transfer of heat by molecules vibrating at their mean positions. So the bodies through which the heat transfer must be in contact with other. So there should be direct contact of the two bodies, or if the heat transfer will take place within the body, then only the thermal conduction will take place. There is no actual movement of matter while transferring heat from one location to the other. Heat energy flows from regions of higher temperature to lower temperature region in a material. So, wide variation in ability to conduct heat energy among different materials is due to the density of free electrons inside the material. The more number of free electrons are generally available with metal. So for efficient heat transfer we need metal. So metals are required for efficient heat transfer because of their high thermal conductivity. Then comes the thermal convection. In this method of heat transfer, what happens? It takes place with the actual motion of matter from one place within the body to the other. If we take an example, if you have seen that when we boil water, we have seen bubbles and currents develop in the water. An apt example of the convection process, the hot water at the bottom becomes lighter and moves upwards, and forcing the cold and dense water at the top to come down and thus get heated up. Generally, the liquids and gases transfer heat by convection. We talk about the fireplaces. They produce natural convection, warm air rises and are replaced by cold air. Most space heating systems operate via convective heat transfer, and that is forced air circulation. There is forced air circulation. The convection is of two types. One is natural convection and another is forced air circulation. Then comes the radiation. It is another form of heat transfer, and it does not require any medium and can be used for transfer of heat in vacuum as well. Generally, in radiation, electromagnetic waves which transfer heat from one place to the other are used. The heat and light from the sun in our solar system reach to our planet using radiation. All materials absorb sunlight and heats up and then re-radiates that as long wavelength infrared radiation. Sandstone dwellings and walls absorb much sunlight during the day and then radiate that as heat at the night. In fact, radiation is the most potent method of heat transfer. In winters, when we sit near a fire, we feel warm. Why? Without touching the wood that is burning there, it is possible by radiation. Then comes the thermal efficiency. The thermal efficiency of any substance depends upon the specific heat of material and its thermal conductivity. The specific heat is a measure of how much energy a substance can store inside it. And thermal conductivity is a measure of efficiency of heat transfer. That is how much we are getting that energy back when we want it. So generally the thermal efficiency depends upon the specific heat and thermal conductivity. If we take an example of water and iron, the thermal conductivity of water is 0.596 watt per meter degree centigrade, and for iron it is 62.764 degree centigrade. So we had already seen that the thermal conductivity of the iron is more than that of water. So to transfer heat through iron is better than to transfer heat through water. But when we talk about the specific heat of water is more, that is 4.19, and for iron it is 0.502. So we have seen that in heat exchanger generally we use water as a medium to transfer heat, because specific heat is more in water, so that much energy is absorbed in water. Then comes the solar collector that we were discussing. If we talk about the earliest application of solar energy, we were using it to heat water. We all have seen that in rural areas the people keep a bucket of water in sunshine for heating purpose. But it takes long time to heat water in this way. Why? Because the heat losses are more and the absorption of solar radiation is less there. So in order to make this process efficient, heating of water efficient, we have started using solar collectors. So these flat plate solar water heaters became important long back in early 1920s if we talk about the world. And after the energy crisis in 1970s, many countries started developing solar water heaters. The technological development of new design has also helped in accepting solar water heaters. Generally, flat plate solar energy collectors are special kinds of heat exchangers that transform solar absorbed energy to internal energy of water or air. So this water and air is used as the transporting medium. So generally or basically a solar collector is a heat exchanger which absorbs the incident solar radiation and convert it into heat and finally transfer this heat to a heat removal fluid, which is also known as working fluid for an end use system. If the working fluid that we are using is water. Solar collector is called solar water collector or solar water heater. If the working fluid is air, we call it solar collector is called as solar air collector or solar air heater. So it depends upon the working fluid. If it is water, it is solar water collector. If it is air, it is called solar air collector. Then we have talked that on the basis of the temperature, we have classified these solar collectors on low temperature, high temperature and medium temperature. So if we talk about the low temperature solar collector, it operates at relatively low temperature. Solar swimming pool collector is a good example for this. The heat transfer or loss takes place by the three modes that we had already discussed. In the conduction, when the molecule of one material come into contact with the molecules of another, heat is transformed from the warmer one to the colder one by the kinetic energy of the molecules. In convection, a warm surface heats the fluid, water or air that comes in contact with it, and the fluid goes away by gravity. In radiation, what will happen? All matter gives off long infrared radiation in proportion to its temperature. If the object gives off more radiation than it receives from the environment, it will lose heat because the low temperature solar collector does not control any of these heat loss factors. Performance falls off very rapidly as collector temperature rises above the ambient temperature. Then comes the medium temperature solar collectors. What are they? Many of our heating requirements occur at temperatures well above the ambient air temperature. At these high temperatures, simple collectors rapidly reach the point where they are losing as much heat as they are receiving, and the efficiency drops to almost zero. What we need to do is to construct a heat trap, something that will let the sun's energy in but not let it out again. With respect to the three heat loss parameters, some of the things that we can do to reduce heat losses is to avoid heat losses through conduction. What we do, we can put the absorber plate inside an insulated box in a way that heat energy will be less able to escape by conduction process. To avoid convection heat losses, what we have to do, we can put a cover over the absorber plate. In that way, when the absorber plate heats the air above it by conduction, the heated air is not able to float away and escape. Of course, we will be looking for a cover that lets the sun's energy in. So the energy that is coming inside the system will be allowed, but the heated air should not be able to float away or escape out. Then comes the radiation. To avoid the radiation losses, we have to put our cover, or we have to make our cover of such material which will be able to transmit short wave solar energy coming in, but block the long wave infrared radiation that is going out. There are only a few materials that will meet these requirements. Some plastic will work, but they are not stable enough at high temperatures. The most commonly used material is glass. Then comes the high temperature solar collectors. So there are several ways by which we can conserve more of the energy that comes into the collector. We can add thicker insulation, or we can add additional cover sheets, or we can evacuate the air from the solar collectors. All these measures will result in a collector that can operate at a higher temperature. But such measures that conserve more energy may prevent even more solar energy from striking the absorber plate. So we have to make a balance amongst all the relevant parameters so as to maximize the collector efficiency. So let us see that on which parameter this solar collector efficiency depends on. Before going to calculate the solar collector's efficiency, let us discuss the solar air heaters, that is the medium that is used as air. Let us first discuss the solar air heaters, then we will discuss their efficiency also. You will get a picture that how they are absorbing. So let us discuss first solar air heaters, then we will discuss the efficiency as well. So broadly, this solar air heater is classified as non-porous absorber, and one is which is having porous absorber. So in non-porous absorber, air stream does not flow through the absorber plate. It may flow above or below the absorber plate. In porous absorber, air stream flows through the absorber plate. Let us discuss first non-porous absorber. Solar heaters with non-porous absorber, and we are calling it a non-porous solar air heater. So it is the simplest type of non-porous solar air heater which is shown here in the figure, and it is the one which consists of a bare metallic plate, the top of which is suitably blackened. Why blackened? To absorb more radiation. Another plate, the rear of which is insulated below the absorber plate, is used to form the duct for airflow. The incident solar radiation on the blackened surface gets absorbed, and the resulting heat is partially transferred to the flowing air within the duct. The main disadvantage of this type of solar collector is high thermal losses to the ambient. Why? Due to convection and radiation. Therefore, some of the alternative designs have been developed where these types of thermal losses are reduced. So, to reduce the convective losses, what we could do, we could cover the absorber plate with one or more transparent covers. Usually we call these transparent covers as glazing, and the airflow duct is between the glazing glass cover and the absorber. The flow of the air is above the absorber. On the other hand, if we talk about another type, there is the airflow is below the absorber in the solar air heater. So some selective coatings may be applied to the absorber to reduce the radiative heat losses. So two kinds could be there. One is in which airflow is above the absorber, and one is where airflow below the absorber. Then comes the thermal efficiency of solar air collector. The thermal efficiency of solar collector is given by the relation eta is equal to Fn into tau alpha minus UL T2 minus Ti minus Tn divided by T, where eta is thermal efficiency of the collector, Fr is heat removal factor of the collector. We will discuss how we calculate the Fr. UL is the heat loss coefficient between absorber plate and ambient of the collector. Tau, we know that tau is transmittivity and alpha is absorptivity. And now comes UL Ti minus Ta by T. This is our convective heat transfer. So what is Ti? Ti is initial air temperature and Ta is ambient air temperature in degrees centigrade. I is solar radiation incident on the. If we talk about this tau alpha E, it is referred to as the effective transmittivity absorptivity of the product, where tau is transmittivity and alpha is absorptivity. Collectively we call it effective transmissivity absorptivity product. So let us discuss that how this heat removal factor of the collector is calculated. The heat removal factor is generally the ratio of useful collected energy to the useful collected energy if absorber plate were at the inlet air temperature. So the maximum value of heat removal factor can be 1, that is unity. and the efficiency can be increased by increasing the heat removal factor and by reducing heat loss coefficient. The other parameters for increasing the thermal efficiency are increasing the mass flow per unit area, increasing the convective heat transfer coefficient between the air stream and the absorber plate. So the material should be such that conductive heat transfer coefficient will be more. Then increasing the surface area to transfer heat from the absorber plate to the air stream using, we can use fins, etc. to increase the surface area. Now, the variation in the method of blowing air and the position of the absorber with respect to the cover leads to different designs with varying thermal efficiency. The number of transparent covers over the absorber is also an important factor which influences the collector's performance. With increasing number of covers, the overall thermal losses from the absorber plate to the ambient decreases, but simultaneously what will happen? The effective transmittivity, absorptivity product of the system will also decrease. Thus, there should be a balance between solar gain and heat loss. If we are going to reduce the heat loss, solar gain will also be reduced. So we have to make a balance. The use of one or more covers, which usually depends on the range of temperatures for which the collector is designed. The final selection of the number of covers has to be based on the economic performance criteria also, which aims to minimize the life cycle cost of thermal energy collected by the solar air heater. The main disadvantage of this non-porous solar air heater is that the low transfer between air and absorber plate takes place. The heat transfer can be increased by roughing the surface of the absorber by the rear, by adding fins, or by making the absorber plate V-corrugated. An important drawback of the non-porous absorber plate is that the necessity of absorbing all incoming solar radiation over the projected area from a thin layer over the surface, which is of the order of few microns. So if we are not going to use selective coatings, unless we are using selective coatings, radiation losses from the absorber plate are excessive, and therefore the collection efficiency is difficult to be improved. The pressure drop along the duct formed between the absorber plate and the rear insulation is also prohibitive in non-porous absorbers. Any effort to increase the heat transfer between the absorber and flowing air stream, such as adding fins or enlarged corrugations, resulting increased pressure drop across the collector. More fan power is therefore required to maintain the same airflow rate through the heater. Then comes the porous type of solar air heater. We have seen that there are certain disadvantages in the non-porous type solar air heater. In porous type solar air heater, the solar radiation penetrates to greater depth and is absorbed gradually depending upon the porosity of the absorber. The incoming air introduced from the upper surface of the matrix is first heated by the upper layers. The air stream gets heated while traveling through the matrix layer, and the lower matrix layers are hotter than the upper ones, resulting into better heat transfer from the matrix. The pressure drop for the porous matrix is usually much lower than the non-porous absorber. Let us summarize whatever we have learned today. We have learned that solar energy experienced by us as heat and light can be used through two routes. The thermal route, which is used for heat, for water heating, cooking, drying, water purification, power generation, etc. And another route is which converts the light into light in solar energy into electricity, which is known as photovoltaic route. Then we had discussed the solar thermal route in detail in this module. In next module we will be discussing our solar photovoltaic module, solar photovoltaic energy. As we had discussed the solar collector, which is basically a heat exchanger, and we had discussed that it absorbs the incident solar radiation and converts it into heat, and finally transfers this heat to a heat removal fluid, and we call it as working fluid for an end use system. We had discussed the types of the solar air heaters, non-porous solar air heater having non-porous absorber and solar air heater having porous absorber, and we had discussed how air may flow and how the heat transfer will take place. We had also discussed that the number of transparent covers over the absorber is an important factor which influences the collector's performance. With increasing number of covers, the overall thermal losses from the absorber plate to the ambient decreases, but simultaneously the effective transmissivity absorptivity product of the system also decreases. There is thus a balance between solar gain and heat loss. The use of one or more covers usually depends on the range of temperature for which the collector is designed. We had also discussed the three modes of heat transfer which take place inside the collector, right from absorbing the solar radiation till converting it into heat. Thank you very much. Now let us discuss the solar radiation on tilted surface, if the surface is tilted. So let us consider the solar radiation falling on a surface. The amount of solar radiation on a terrestrial surface at a given location for a given time depends on the orientation and slope of the surface as well. A surface which is always normal to the sun's ray would receive maximum amount of solar radiation. The solar energy collectors may be tilted at a suitable angle so that it is roughly normal to the sun's rays so that maximum energy collection is obtained. If you wish to design any solar energy device, you need to know the data of solar radiation on such tilted surfaces. However, measured or estimated radiation data are available mostly either for normal incidence or for horizontal surfaces. It is necessary to convert these data to radiation on tilted surfaces. If you see in the figure, the IBN is beam radiation at normal incidence and IN is beam radiation at horizontal surface. IBI is beam radiation at tilted surface, and from this figure we could see that IB is equal to IBN cos Z, angle is Z for horizontal surface, and similarly IBI will be equal to IBN cos I. There the in tilted surface angle is I. If we talk about the beam radiation tilt factor, we give it by RB and it will be given by RB will be given by IBI divided by IB. It is ratio of the beam radiation, that is IB in tilted surface to the beam radiation in the horizontal surface. So it will be IBI divided by IB, ratio of beam radiation at tilted surface to the ratio of beam radiation at horizontal surface. And if we replace it by the values that we had taken out, for IB it is IBN cos Z and for IBI it is IBN cos I, so it will be cos I upon cos Z. If we talk about the tilted surface, it receives diffuse radiation also as well as reflected radiation from the ground and surroundings in addition to the beam radiation. The diffuse sky radiation on the tilted surface at an angle is given by ID is equal to 1 plus cos S by 2, where ID is diffuse sky radiation on the tilted surface and S is the angle by which it is tilted, by which surface is tilted. If the ground and other surfaces seen by tilted surface have a diffuse reflectivity of tau g for the both of the beam and diffused sky radiation, the amount of ground reflected solar radiation on the tilted surface is equal to tau g into 1 minus cos S by 2 times the of total radiation. And total radiation is sum of beam radiation plus diffused radiation on the horizontal surface. So the beam radiation, diffuse radiation and reflected components can be added to give the total incidental radiation, that is IT, on a tilted surface. So the total solar radiation on a horizontal surface, I, is the sum of horizontal beam and diffuse radiation. If we talk about the monthly average of daily total solar radiation on horizontal surface, how we will compute it? Generally, the computation of solar radiation either on horizontal or tilted surface is not an easy task. It requires complete knowledge of solar geometry and Earth and Sun relationships also. However, when the researchers have done on these subjects, various correlations have been developed to estimate the solar radiations at horizontal surfaces. So ultimately we need the value of monthly average of daily solar radiation on horizontal surface. So the correlation that is frequently used for determining monthly average of daily solar radiation on a horizontal surface is given by H by HA is equal to A plus B N by N, where AH is monthly average daily total radiation on horizontal surface, HO is monthly average daily extraterrestrial radiation on the horizontal surface. Small n, we know that it is monthly average daily hours of bright sun hours, and capital N is monthly average of maximum possible daily hours of bright sunshine hour. And A and B are regression parameters and are given by the correlations. In this correlation, phi and E0 are used, where phi is latitude and E0 is elevation of the location above sea level in kilometers, and N by capital N we already know. So these two correlations are used for calculating A and B. If we talk about the latitude and elevation of some of the locations, they are, we talk about Bangalore, the latitude is 12 degree 58 north and elevation is 921 meter. If we talk about New Delhi, it is 28 degree 35 minute north and 216 meter is elevation. बस यहीं तक था, ठीक है।